Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today you'll be expanding the railroads of different companies, or buying stocks in those companies. The trick is you'll need to increase influence in order to make sure of those victory points from your stocks. Mini Express is a sequel of Mini Rails, a game that I gave a rave review to and got a saxophone serenade, my highest honor. This is for 3 to 5 players, plays in 30 to 45 minutes, and published by Mo Ideas Game Design. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototype and not final. You're going to want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Here's Mini Express, and over the course of the game, you're going to be building tracks from these different companies across the country, going into different cities and fulfilling different demands and gaining influence while doing that. But you'll also be trying to get stock certificates or shares of each of these different companies. Now, shares are the only way to get victory points at the end of the game, so this is what you're going for. Now, but it's tricky because each of the shares are going to be worth different amounts depending on where you are on this influence track. So let's pretend it's the end of the game to show you how you score, because that will help you figure out what you're trying to do in the game. So I've set this up as if it was the end of the game, but keep in mind all these numbers would actually be much larger if it was the end of a real game, but this will give you a good example. So let's take this orange share, for example. This is going to be worth a certain amount of victory points because this is the orange train, orange share. Now this is saying 5. This says that there are 5 pieces of track out on the map. Again, there'd be more at the end of the game, but I'm just showing you an example. So since it was at 5, the one who has the most influence in the orange it's going to be worth 6 points, each of these shares. So if this was the end, this blue player who has the most influence, because they're the furthest down that track, each of these shares is going to be worth 6 points for them. Second place, the gray player, each orange share is worth 4, and the white player here, it's going to be worth 2 for other. This player that has 0 influence, it's worth nothing. You need at least 1 influence in that to at least get the other. So at the end of the game, everyone is going to look at their shares. They're going to see how much they're worth depending on where the train is down here on the track, and seeing whether they're in the first, second, or at least 1 others in the different influences for that company. So the brown shares are going to have to do with this and this. The gray shares are going to have to do with this and this. The orange we showed you, and the white is going to have to do with this track and the white train. So essentially, you're going to add up what all your shares are worth depending on where you are on this influence track and how many points you get depending on that. That's how you win the game. So let's talk about how you get these things and how the influence gets manipulated. Now to start the game, every player will, in a drafting process, actually get 2 different shares to start with to give them some sort of thing to focus on at the beginning of the game. Now on your turn, we're going to go in clockwise order. Each player has only 2 choices. You're either going to be building tracks or taking shares. Let's talk about building tracks. So let's say at the beginning of the game, my 2 shares I got were orange and brown. So I'm going to want the influence for these 2 colors of shares to go up, and they have to do with the influence of the different colored goods that we talked about earlier on that other track. And since brown is one of those, let's say we want to build from here to this city here, Louisville. So notice that from here to here, we're going to have to go 1, 2, 3. There's going to have to be 3 trains in order to be able to get there. So we'd look at the brown trains. Each company starts with 4 trains in their sort of stack there. They'll never have more than 5. So we need 3 of them, and there are. If there weren't 3, we could not build there. So in this case, we're going to take 3 of these trains here from brown. And I'm going to start placing them, and you have to use the shortest route to get here. You can't go up and around the shortest route. Now I'm placing them down sideways. Usually you'd place them like this, but on camera it looks a little bit better here. But in this little city, I am going to put it straight up like this because there's not enough room. So here we've got the 3 things here. We've got all the way here. Now the different cities, when this happens, we see the 2 goods that are here. We have the brown wood and the orange. So let's say we were the red player. We had these 2 in the demands, so both of those are going to go up 1 influence. So we were the red player, so we would move it up. Everyone starts with 1 influence of each type to start the game. So now we are leading the influence for both of these. Of course, that's going to change throughout the game. We're also going to increase the track length for that brown company. Now, they're only going to increase the amount of the empty hexes. You don't count the city, so this is going to go up 2. So here we go up to 2. So if the game ended right now, every brown share is going to be worth 4 points for whoever's in the lead of that share. So my brown share right now, since I'm in the lead, is worth 4 points per share, but this is going to obviously change as the game goes on. Now there's a couple other things that happen when you're placing, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Let's say the next player does the other option. Instead of building a track, you can simply just take a stock. So what you're going to do is take one of the stocks of here, but it's interesting things happen here. Let's say they take a brown stock because they're like, hey, that company's going up, I want to get on that. They take this stock. We look at how many trains are still in their stack here. Now remember, there was just one of them there. Let's assume this was the blue player. So in that color, brown, they're going to go down 1 influence for every train that was still there. In this case, it's just 1, which brings them down to 0. Now you can never go down so that you're less than 0. So if there were 2 or more trains in there, we could not have taken that share because our influence wasn't high enough there. So by taking shares, you're typically going to be going down on the influence on that. So it's a hard thing to balance in this game. However, after you take a share, you're going to add 3 from a general supply to here. So there was 1 left, now there's 4, and it's going to be a max of 5. So now if somebody wanted to take a stock of the brown, they're going to be going down 4 influence in that track, essentially making them, less influential in that, making those shares actually worth less for them. Now let's say the next player wants to build tracks from this gray train, and they want it to also go to Louisville. So here we've added those trains here, taking the shortest route. Now, anytime you go into any hex, this includes the cities, that has other people already there, for each hex you do that in, any trains that were already there, could be multiple colors, each of them get an additional train to their track section down by the shares. Meaning from the general supply, which is off to the side, you would add another one of these brown ones. Now remember, the max is 5. So normally we would have added 2, one for the empty hex and one for the city hex that was already there, but this maxed out now at 5. So as you're running into other hexes, you're also adding more trains for there, which will allow those trains to go further, but also you're making it harder for people to take stock shares of that color because it's going to make their influence go down even more. Now, not only would that blue player also go up influence here and here, but each of the cities has, there's 3 different types of cities, and there's different things that happen in there. This one is black, this one is brownish, and this one is gold. And you'll notice the gold has a 3, the brown has a 1, and this black has a 2. As soon as there's 2 different companies here in this one here or 3 here, it is finished, which means no other train can go there. So these are going to be the only 2 that are there, and this just goes away. So this city essentially is closed for any other new trains going there. And the last placement rule is that you can branch off. You don't have to start from a city. You can branch off from any of your other routes. So if Orange wanted to go to this city, they could branch off from this one here and just go 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, the shortest route to get there. Now looking at these demand tiles, you'll see that they're very different. There's different amounts of each of them, and they're randomly placed each game, so each game is going to feel a little different, be a little puzzly. There's also some demand tiles that has a purple cube on there. Here you would get orange influence, and you'd also get 1 influence in one of the other 3 types, and there's a handful of those as well. And the points are tracked on the top there. Now players will continue taking turns, and the game will end in 1 of 2 ways. Either there's 2 companies that have no shares left, or there's 2 companies that have no tracks left here and none left in the general supply to fill these up. The game will end, and then you go to that scoring that I talked about in the beginning of the game. Whoever has the most points is the winner. Well, there you have Mini Express, and as I showed in the overview, just like Mini Rails, it has streamlined mechanisms choosing just one of the 2 actions, but lends itself to great depth and player interaction, making every game feel different. Now, if you'd like to see the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the fine folks at Mo Ideas Game Design would love your support.